Welcome to the Soulful Eclectic. I'm your host, Diana Collins, and I want to welcome you to the next episode of everything, right? This episode is actually part two to Chris Zudenka's story of regaining yourself after a divorce, so life after a divorce. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We're talking about being okay with being by yourself is where we left off last time, and how to become okay with being by yourself when you've always been a partnership, had a partnership, been a duo. So now growing and being single again, and how has that begun to change his life, because it's still happening, right? The change is still going on, the journey is still happening, and so how has that been reflective in his life? So with that, we go into part two. Thank you. Learning how to be with yourself. That
Successfully.
I'm glad you added that in there, successfully. Because it's hard to be with yourself. It really is.
Can be.
And I wanted to ask, did you ever seek therapy at some point to help you navigate this at all?
I think that's
from the divorce, and I know you said you worked
Mm-hmm.
on the divorce, and
My wife and I went through a lot of marriage counseling, and then it ended. And when I moved to Arizona, I was really struggling, and Catholics really don't believe in divorce from the old canon laws.
Right.
But the church, I will say, St. Patrick's Catholic Church here, I was started to go to mass there, and they had a thing in their bulletin that said we have a divorce support group. Now that sounds so simplistic, but for a Catholic church to have a divorce support group, it was mind blowing to me. It's like,
huge.
my goodness. And again, I'm not a group joiner. I've never been that kind of, but I was like, maybe I need that.
Right.
But the reason I tell this part of the story because I think it's very male. And the males, or even the women listening, will nod their heads and believe this. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to this divorce support group, which I did. But I also started doing some counseling on my own. And in my mind, this was, I don't know, like let's say November. I was like, oh, I'm going to the counselor once a week. I'm doing the divorce support group once a week. By January, I'll be fine. Like 1 + 1 = 2. I'll be good. Then January rolls around and I'm still a big giant mess. But my male brain was like,
male brain.
It's like I'm going to pound in this nail and then it's going to hang up there forever and then it falls down. It's so. But that's how I thought. It was like, so I did not much counseling. Both of those, the divorce support group and the counseling, didn't last that long. But I think for the 1 or 2 months that I did them both, it gave me an outlet. Because when you live alone, unless you talk to the walls, you're not talking to anybody. Because at work, you shouldn't be discussing your whole life's problems.
So we hear a lot at work. It's like,
I think we all do, but I was able to get a lot of stuff out of me.
Good.
And some people need a lot more, and so it's not that I'm special or did anything right. It's just
you did what you
I was
needed.
able to get it out of me to help me move forward. I didn't move forward in giant steps right away, but I got it out of me and help. It's so, life is so funny. We've all known how many people are divorced or challenges in life, but then when I was divorced, you feel like you're the only one going through that. It's so ridiculous. But in the moment, you feel like, God, nobody understands what I'm going through.
Right.
I had a brother that had gotten divorced, but he'd been married like 1 year or something. It's like he has
no clue.
It's completely different than being with someone 20 years. And you feel like you're the only one, like nobody can understand. And it's like, I think everybody can understand for the most part. But that's how you feel.
Yes.
You really, and maybe not everybody, but that's how I know a lot of people have talked. That's how you feel in the moment. Like nobody can understand you, nobody can relate. And that counseling, more so than the divorce support group, because that was a group, but the individual counseling gave me a chance to get a lot of things out of me. And that was really helpful. And I think if I wouldn't have done both of those things, I wouldn't be wouldn't have been able to move forward as quickly, which wasn't quick, but
Mm-hmm.
I probably might still be struggling in some ways. But that also took. I've just shared that, but there's probably most of the people in my life don't know that I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a male, we don't share that we
No.
would ever want to go to a counselor or that we would need the help. And I never have.
Mm-hmm.
With very, very few people. Very few. I'm not ashamed of it, but you certainly don't, as a man, we don't run around and promote it.
No.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just being honest. It's like, I didn't call my buddies, hey, yeah, it's just at my counselor. I'm like, what? So it's just it's that macho, I guess, sign of weakness or whatever you want to call it. But I had something in me told me that I needed to do it. Nobody told me to do it. Nobody suggested that I should do it.
Right.
I think there was a part of it was I was very, very sad,
Mm-hmm.
rightfully so, living here alone, and I felt anger that wasn't directed at my ex-wife, just angry,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, at the situation.
Right.
And I was like, I need somehow, by the grace of God, I realized I needed some help to sort through that.
It's a grieving process.
Well, you learn all those things, but in the moment, I'm saying it was hard to accept.
Right.
It's hard to accept that I needed help, and I'd never needed help in any way for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, thank God, but we've been very self-sufficient, very successful, my ex-wife and I never needed help in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And we were married so long, we saw so many of our friends get married and divorced.
Oh, wow.
And we were the ones that.
It stayed.
So it was, I never needed help.
Mm-hmm.
Now I did. And it was a real mind trip.
Wow.
And not something you want at that point of your life.
No.
Certainly not what you envision.
Mm-mm.
Not what you plan for yourself.
And definitely not one you share.
As a man, probably more so. And not me. I guess I wasn't a sensitive male in those, or whatever.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because it's nice to get the male perspective on, divorce and separation and relationships because we always hear the female side.
Yeah.
Not just one side or the other, but we hear from the female perspective, and it's nice to hear from the man's perspective and what the man goes through because we always see that, oh, they'll be fine, they're a man. They're going to pick themselves up and they're going to do fine.
I think that's part of the male mantra, and like I said, I think it's all part of that. And where I grew up was very blue collar. The man went to work, and in a lot of cases, the wife stayed home and raised the kids. But there was no option for the man. He went to work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, your dad died? All right, well, you get today off. You go to work tomorrow. The man just worked and provided,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. You don't get the chance to complain, and you don't. And I guess my dad and my grandfathers were like that, very loving people, but you rarely heard them complain about having to go to work. That's what you did.
Right.
There was no option, and you didn't get to change careers 20 years in. You work here, and
That's where you
you're
work
happy.
until you die.
Be happy that you're there, and so I think that's all part of me, and part of why I wouldn't necessarily want to share or talk about it, but I'm sure glad, and that's why I say it's by the grace of God, because I don't know why else I would have thought to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and then actually done it. Because we think a lot of things, but then
Right.
actually following through and then doing it is different, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy that I did, even though the first couple of sessions were terrible. And you think, oh, I don't want to do that again. But you have to sort through all that stuff. You got to talk about it, which is hard,
Mm-hmm.
because yes, you want to talk, you got to talk about it, but then you hear it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really difficult.
And then you're going to own your stuff.
That's what I was just going to say. And then you're going to get questioned on why did you do this and that, and you got to really dive deep into yourself. And probably, of course, I'd never had at that point. I hadn't had to. In other ways, sure, but yeah, you have to accept everything you did wrong.
Right. And
And
how's
that's
that?
a hard thing for anybody,
Mm-hmm.
because we all make a lot of mistakes. Everybody.
Yeah, we
And,
do.
when you hear it out loud, it's not a lot of fun.
No, it's not. It's like, oh, that was stupid. Why
So
did I say
it was very challenging,
Mhm.
but I'm so glad that I did it. but it's not an easy process. Like I said, the
No.
1 + 1 didn't equal 2. January rolled around and I was a big giant mess. And I thought, why is this happening? I should be like forward. And like, no, doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
So,
Now, are you and your ex-wife still friends? You chat?
No.
You
and
just kind of separated completely?
I moved away 100%, and we don't have children, so there wasn't a reason to stay in touch. And I think early on, I think it would have been more harmful had we. Because we had a loving relationship. It wasn't a contentious marriage or divorce. And so, sometimes you need to get away from someone, but it wasn't that. It was just, we had a lot of challenges not being able to have kids, and we wanted different things at that point in life. And it was just, we met when she was a freshman in college, and I was just a couple years older. I mean, whatever you think of your life at 18 and 20 is, that can change by the time you're in your 30s. And it's like, what do I really want out of life? And we just wanted different things. So it was a sad divorce more than hateful. And so I think if we had stayed in contact early on, it would have been too hard for either of us to move on properly.
Okay.
And that was part of the reason why I moved away too. Could we now? I think we could, but it's sort of
moved on.
Moved on, yeah. But I only look back at it as a blessing in my life. But that's a hard thing to. At that point in my life, it was half of my life, literally half of my life. And we were fortunate enough to take a lot of trips together and do a lot of great many things happily together. And now I got boxes full of pictures and half my life. And it's like, well, do I throw it in the trash?
Right.
I don't want to look at it because it's too painful for years to look at it. But what do I do with all of that stuff? And what did half of my life just mean? Nothing?
No.
But you go through all those thoughts, like, because now that's gone. Did I lose 20 years of my life? Or it took me a while to realize, to look back on it as only a blessing and a gift, because we did love each other unconditionally and had a love that I hope to replicate again someday. But I know it's possible. And I think for her too. I don't really speak for her, of course, but I look back on it now as a blessing. Now, the pictures I'm still not displaying. Those kind of things. Let's not get ridiculous.
I was going to say, now you got pictures up or what?
No. But for a while, I wasn't sure how to compartmentalize that. As a man, we want to put it somewhere.
Yeah,
we want to put everything somewhere, and there was nowhere to put it. So it was hard for me to figure out what to think of it, what to make of it. Do I never talk about it again?
It's you.
It is. That's what you have to come to accept. But for a couple of years, it was just a hard thing for me. I had a hard time sorting through what do I do with that.
It's a hard pill to swallow because I can resonate with that a little bit because I have been in a relationship for 14 years, and you still have. Same with you. I have those pictures.
Yeah.
Right. And what do you do with them? They're there. My kids pull them out every now and again when they come home to visit. It's like, okay, have fun with that. you guys can have fun with that. Mom, look at that. I don't care. kind of thing. But it makes us who we are.
Yes.
And it would be shameful to put that away.
Yes. But you have to get to a point of understanding that. At least I did.
Yes.
That was the challenge.
Yes.
Because it was difficult. Because when I would meet somebody here and they'd say, oh, I'd always wanted to go to Hawaii. And I'd been multiple times. I go, yeah, I've been. Well, let me see the pictures. And I go, never mind.
It was a different time.
But all of, like, my life, because really the first half of it, I was in high school and college. So, like, my life as an adult had all been with her.
Yeah.
And every memory I had was tied to her. And it was a hard thing where do I put that? You can put your childhood as sort of an easy thing to put somewhere, but my adult life at that point, it was all with one person, was now gone. But I'm only 40, so I know my life is far from over.
Right.
But it was hard it would really, I'd say maybe in some ways it's still hard, but not anywhere close to that level. But it's kind of like, I have my wedding album. Now, am I ever going to want to look at that again? But I have a hard time just putting it in the garbage.
Yes.
And it certainly can't sell that at a garage sale.
No,
So.
you can't put that in a Goodwill, right?
But I just feel like it'd be wrong to throw it in the garbage. But I don't have children to pass it on to or anything like
Right.
that. So, but
At
So-
some point, you might have to. How
Maybe.
do you feel about that?
well, it sits in the garage in a box, so it's not hurting me or in my way.
Right.
But yeah, at some point, I guess I'd have to throw it away. But then again, those pictures are of me being married. What's wrong with that?
That was you.
You don't have to display it, but it was beautiful wedding, by the way. So beautiful pictures. So it's, yeah, those type of things that you have to sort of figure out
Yeah.
that they don't drive you crazy, and but what do you do with them?
Right.
And all of that is it's an imprint on your DNA.
It is. It is. And as I said, it makes us who we are, and it's that season in our life.
Yeah.
It taught us a lesson. We grew from it, and it's just like a tree, another branch, a leaf that's there, right?
Yeah.
And that leaf blowed away. Has blown away. So now, here you are, 4 years into your acting career. I believe 5 now.
Yeah.
5 years into your acting career. Develop this whole new person, living this whole new life, and, creating another version of your authentic self.
Right.
Because, you were already authentic from the beginning. So now this is just an additional piece to you. Where do you see yourself going from here?
It's a great question, because I'm not entirely sure, because this has been a new venture for me, so to speak, and I've embraced it and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've also learned that something else could pop up around the corner, and I need to be open to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, because if somebody would have told me when I moved here that I would be acting, I would have just rolled my eyes and said, yeah, okay. So I don't know, and I think it's okay not to know. I think lots of times we feel like we need to know what we're going to do. I know when I did, when I got married, it's like, oh, I'm going to get married when we graduate, and we're going to have kids, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it's like all of a sudden, that's not where you're at. But it doesn't feel okay. I think I'm at a point now where this is great, and I embrace it, and I love it. But if something else comes along that I find a different passion for, that's okay too. Part of that reason is because I'm not married, and I don't have to worry about taking care of somebody else at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think my whole life could change again.
And that could change too,
Right.
right?
If I'm with somebody, I think my life changes differently, because acting isn't a real stable thing to do in life.
Mhm.
I'd also want to spend more time with whoever she may be
Right.
at that point, and that
Mhm.
might change the dynamic, and that's okay. But I think for now, I'm open to. But I love acting because it's very creative, and I worked in an office, so to speak, for so many years. Liked my job, but it was never a passion. Liked it. I never want to say I hated it. It never was true. I liked my job, but to say I loved it, well, you worked.
Right.
That's what you do. You got to survive.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to have great jobs and work. But
Mhm.
love? But I do love acting, and I think part of that is because it's so different than being in an office all day long. And there's creativity that you get to do and dive into characters.
Oh, it could be a different part of you.
Yes. And that's been just a lot of fun. Challenging, of course. I take it really seriously, and that's what I like to do. Some people
Yeah.
take it a little less seriously, but
I
I
appreciate
love to take
that.
it seriously.
And I appreciate that within you, because you find, again, so many people who don't take it seriously. And I'm new to it, fresh 1 year. Don't even have an agent yet, kind of thing. And even though right now it's part-time because I work full-time, but I still find that I'm still putting that academic work into it. If it's something I want to do, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to study. Right? I'm going to do my monologues. I'm going to practice in front of a camera.
Right.
And nobody realizes that if there's something that's within you that's a passion, you're going to work for it.
Right.
Because it's you. You're bringing you to the table in anything that we do. And that's thank you for saying that, because that's something that I really like to share with people, that you can't just wake up and just throw sheet to the wind.
Right.
You have to have at least some plan, some work
Yeah.
into what it is that you
You
do.
really do. It's that tip of the iceberg thing where people see the tip of the iceberg and think that's it, but below the surface, that thing is 85 times the size of what we see above the water.
Right.
And that below the water is all the work and sacrifice you put into to most things to make yourself successful. Because yes, mine all started from the modeling, which really just happened serendipitously, obviously. But I put myself into it, for one. That was one step I made. But I could have left it alone at that. I chose to go further. And when I chose to go further, I put in the work.
Right.
So anything that's happened for me is because I've put myself out there and worked really hard to make it happen. Not because I just sort of, I'll go audition for this and now I'm in a movie. Yeah. That can happen, but it's not going to happen very
Thank you.
consistently.
It doesn't happen to everyone.
But you're probably not going to get much of a role at that point either.
No.
And I like to do the bigger parts because that's just what I like to do. And that's not going to happen regularly. It may happen by default once or twice, but you really got to put in the work. And I think a lot of artists feel like, well, I don't want to work that way. I'm an artist. And it's like, well, no, you still have to put in the work. The difference is you get to do this rather than working in a coal mine.
Exactly.
That's work.
That's work.
That's hard. That's suffering. You memorizing some lines ain't someone, you can put a little effort for that.
Exactly.
And still be an artist.
Exactly.
Okay? That's how I view it. So, I think having worked in an academic background for so many years, I view it a little differently, and worked in a professional setting for so many years. When I'm on a set, I come at it professionally that maybe a lot of artists don't, because they haven't worked. A lot of actors and artists have never really worked in an office or a traditional professional environment, so they don't have that same mindset or thought process.
Right.
I think it's been beneficial to me because I have, and I approach it that way. And so every director I've worked with to a person has asked me back for something else, and I think it's because they know I come prepared, ready. They know they can count on me, and they know I'll deliver. But they've seen it not just once. They know, and to me that's more important than anything else.
Yes.
Is delivering. And when they hired me for this, well then I better deliver. Not just great, okay. Tell me when to show up. I'll be no.
No.
If you're a part of it, be a part of it 100%.
Absolutely.
And it's led me to a lot of really interesting things. I mean, and that's been the fun for me. One of the the very first thing I did was I was a judge. That was an easy thing to be. I was like a panel judge. That was an easy gig. Then I played a detective, which I don't have any background in police or family that's been in. So I studied, and that was an interesting role. But playing a detective wasn't a tremendous stretch for me. Like just thinking logically in that movie and the way the character was written wasn't as much of a departure. But I really wanted to see what I could do.
Oh, you want to stretch yourself.
Yeah, and then again, that's me
growing
and putting myself out there. I didn't need to.
Right.
But so I auditioned for a role in Los Angeles to play a drug-addicted father. And thankfully, I know nothing about drugs in my life.
Right.
But I wanted to say, well, could I do it and be real, and be realistic? And so, and I thought, wow, I went out to Universal to audition. Part of me was just like, that's just gonna be awesome to go to Universal Studios and audition. The fact that they would they would even audition me at that point because I was pretty raw to star in this little movie. They send you a script, a piece of the script.
Right. Your slide.
And I studied it like crazy and prepared, and it's a very emotional scene. I was like, oh boy, and it's easier to do that at home, but I was like, boy, could I be that emotional in front of everybody? And when I went out and I killed the audition, but it was a weird experience because I was playing somebody I was so far removed from. But it goes back to, again, when I moved here, nobody knew me at all. So they only knew me as a single divorce guy. And when I went in front of that room, nobody of the people casting that, they didn't know me at all. maybe I had a drug problem that I was drawing on,
Right.
or something.
From what
So I was thinking, oh, but they don't know
Right.
what my background is. So can I pull this off? But they don't have any preconceived notion of, oh, it's this guy, and he's not going to be able. They had no preconceived notion of that. And then so they cast me in that. We filmed that in Universal, and that was a real stretch, obviously. And I did a lot of preparation and studying to do that role, and it was really challenging. And then that just caused me to stretch myself for no reason. Nobody said you should. Nobody's you can get in a lane and just play a father every time or a cop.
Right.
I just wanted to keep doing different things, and so I was on. And I really just liked the process of the audition. So I was auditioning for all sorts of stuff that was way far removed from who I am, just to see if I could do it.
But it stretches you.
And a lot of them I got, and plenty of them I didn't get, because that's how it. But I liked to see. I like pushing myself to say, could I do that? Could I play that convincingly? And I think sometimes I did. Right, that's how I think. But sometimes they're only looking for a certain thing when they cast. It's not even the acting. It's like, oh, well, you're not tall enough. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too, well, we want someone with red hair. But it was one of the very first I learned this really early on. One of the very first commercial auditions I went in on was a Harley Davidson commercial. And it might have been it was the very first one I did. Either way, there was this big audition process. And I thought, whoa, I'm never going to get that. It was just a weird. And then they called me back, and they had 4 of us that came back as finalists for this commercial. And they had all of us in this green room ahead of time, which normally they don't put all the actors in the same space, but they did. And all these other guys were from LA and had all these were on TV and credit. And then there's me. And all these 3 other guys look like your more traditional Harley Davidson, bigger guys, tattoos, long hair. And then there's me. I don't look anything like these 3. I look nothing like those 3. They all look exactly the same, more or less, and then there's me. And I auditioned, and I was talking to the director, and he's like, I loved your audition. And this is what he said to me. So I'd learned right away early on, too. He goes, you're not at all what we're looking for, but your audition was so great that we thought we'd bring you back and see if that's the way we want to go. So they'd written it for the traditional
biker guy.
But they just liked the way I auditioned. And sometimes they can pivot, depending on a script or a story, and change the look of a person. But then they ended up giving it to one of the other guys. But it gave me really valuable knowledge there. It's like, it's not always about you. No matter how good you are.
Yes.
It's not about you. They have something else in mind.
Yes.
And you can still be great, and it's not going to happen. Because only one person can do it. They can't pick multiple people. They can only pick one. So it was really great for me early on to learn that. And I was working a regular job anyway, so it wasn't like I was devastated. I was like, oh, whatever. Okay, great. And then they called me back and did another one. And so, but I learned, because it was so weird. I remember sitting in that room, and I had done nothing. And these guys are talking, you were on Law & Order. Yeah, me too. And you did this commercial, and nobody's talking to me. I'm this idiot in the corner thinking, why am I even in this room with you? Are we on the same commercial shoot, these guys? Because I don't look anything like them. So,
is this candid camera?
Right. So it was a good experience, and that's part of this world. It's just it's a wacky non-business business that does so many things against the grain. And but I really wanted to stretch myself as an actor. What could I do? What couldn't I do? So I've just put myself out there for a lot of roles, and I'm sure I've been terrible at times, and that's okay too. I'm not, at least I don't care. But even if I know I'm terrible or it's not me, I still prepare the same way. I still study the same way. I still go at it the same way. Maybe I can't do it.
Right.
But at least I will try that. I won't, I can't really do that, so I'll just sort of go halfway, and if it happens. No, I still go 100%. Even if I know it's probably too much of a stretch in one way or another.
But that's awesome.
I think that's part of acting, though.
It is.
Like, can you really act? That to me, because it took me I did, the other thing, you do these roles and commercials come out right away. Commercial isn't really acting. I mean, you say a line, yeah, here's your pizza or whatever. It's not like, it's more reaction rather than acting. But I did that detective movie and I did some other stuff. But you don't see the finished product for, could be a year. Could be longer. So I had done some things but never seen myself act other than a commercial, which I said is like nothing. That's not like, so I wasn't really sure if I could. And this might sound weird, but like I auditioned for that drug addict role. I didn't know if I could. I'd never seen myself on film at that point. So why I thought I should even go further, I don't know. But I did. And then I did that, and I didn't see that for the longest time. But I did another movie where I played an abusive father, and when I finished that, and thankfully, again, I don't know anything about abuse, abusive family-child relationships. Thank God. It was another stretch role. And when I finished that role, and so now it's like a couple years in, and when I saw that, I was like, it'll sound a little, narcissistic, I guess, but I was like, well, I guess I can do it. I still hadn't seen the other stuff. They did this one really quick. It was a short film, and I was like, it won a lot of awards, and I was like, oh, I guess. I thought I could at that point, obviously, because I kept getting called back, but I still hadn't seen myself. I've seen it with an audience, see myself. Because, you send something to your family and their friends, oh, that was great. It's like, was it? I don't know. Might not have been. Thank you.
So that was true validation for you.
That was. But that's when I finally thought, oh, I can do it. Still, not greatness is irrelevant. Like how good I can, but I know I can. Because I played somebody that's polar opposite of me, and people really bought into it and believed it. It's like, oh, I can do that. And that just gave me a little bit more fire and fuel. But it's a challenge.
It is a challenge.
And when you play those roles, they're tough because if you really get into it, it sticks with you. You don't just, unless you're a real sociopath, you don't just turn it off as soon as they say rap.
All right, I'm done.
It's hard to, I played that abusive father, and then for like a week, I was just bitter and angry. Like we were done filming, but I came back home because I was out of town. I came back home, and I was just like angry and yelling at everything, and somebody finally said, why are you so angry? I was like, I don't know. Just angry. I realized, it's still part of like in me. I had to play this horrible person for a week, and
that stuff stays with you.
Yeah, and I had to get it out of me.
But it shows the kind of person you are. You're very, I would say, I'm sorry, my phone's being it, but I thought I shut it off. But you're a very empathic person, because it takes a level of empathy to even have that sit with you even after you're done. So, that's great, because not everyone has that. Well, especially men.
That comes from my mother.
She's your mother?
Very, very empathic person. She worked for years with, mentally, physically handicapped people, and and she's very much that way, and I know I get what I do have of that, because a lot of people tell you I have none. But what I do have comes from her, no question. No question.
No, you have some. You have some. I can witness that for her. You have some. But yeah, so definitely that shows. But yeah, I don't want to take any more of your time.
That's okay.
I duly appreciate you coming to talk to me. I'm sure I probably will have you come back again.
I would love to.
Because I see the layers in you.
Thank you.
And
well, that's one thing I really enjoyed about your podcast when you started doing it, is because you're dealing with a lot of personally emotional, real things in life, and a lot of podcasts are just funny or irreverent, so to speak. But you're dealing with like real issues in people's lives and how people deal with that. That's what I find very interesting, and I think a lot of people do too. And I think, especially in the world of acting, people think it's all fun and games, and it can be, of course.
Of course.
But it's just like everything else. It can be. Probably most people in it are damaged in some way.
Yes.
I don't think I'm damaged, but I went through stuff.
You went through stuff.
And like I said, I wouldn't have probably been an actor if I hadn't gone through anything.
Right.
Like I would have never done it when I was
No.
younger, but I'd gone through stuff, and it
Being
had an
married,
impact on
being
me.
home
Yes.
with your wife, you had no thoughts of doing any
It changed
of
the
this.
imprint on my DNA, of course.
Absolutely.
And it took me in this direction. Take people in other directions. It took me in this
And
direction.
it took you in this one, which is
Yeah.
totally positive. And that's what I like to show, that everything that happens that is negative in our lives doesn't have to have a negative end in
It
it.
doesn't have to, and I think I would say the biggest ability for it not to be is your own self.
Yes.
How do you look at it? You're looking at the day as partially sunny or partially cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
Which do you prefer, the sun or the clouds?
Exactly.
Because you can look at it either way. And there's always going to be a negative consequence in life, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to say you just learn from it and move on. But I mean, you do have your own mindset. You want to be happy about it or angry about it. I've learned that through counseling
Mm-hmm.
and through the divorce support group. Like, how do you want to deal with it?
Right.
Because you do have the choice.
Choice.
You'll still be angry and upset at sometimes, but you still have the choice of how you want to handle that. If you want to just be, and by the grace of God, I'll say this too. I know we're trying to wrap up, but I had to pay support to my ex-wife. And the first time I wrote the check, and I'm dating myself because nobody writes checks anymore, but the first time I wrote the check, I was just pissed off and angry.
Mm-hmm.
In the second month, when I went to write that check, this truly by the grace of God, it just hit me. It's like, you know what? I'm going to have to do this every month. And I can really choose to be just bitter and angry and
Mm-hmm.
run around, yelling and screaming, or I can just write the check and move on. And God is my witness. That's how I never had a bitter thought after that first month.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only because of God. Because
Right.
nobody else was.
Was
And
you.
I was able to turn that switch. I don't know how. I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Something within me from above, whatever
Right.
Buddha. I don't care what you believe in.
Right.
It wasn't me.
Some divine intervention happened.
Something helped me not be bitter and angry that I was writing that check
Mm-hmm.
after the first month. Because I could have been for years.
Yeah.
Because I had to write it for I could have been really horrible in my own head and angry
Mm-hmm.
about it, and I never chose to be.
Yeah. So it's a choice.
There's always a
There's
choice.
always.
And that's
a choice.
in that little moment in time, and is why I bring that up. It's helped me all these years later. So it's like you do have a choice.
You do have a choice.
You do have a choice. Not easy,
No.
but we always have a choice to how we want to look at something, handle something, deal with something. And it's
Mhm.
okay to be bitter and angry at times because
Mhm.
you got to get it out of you. But there's also time to put that away.
Yep.
And everyone's on their own time schedule. That's the other thing too.
Absolutely.
Like my 1 + 1 = 2. That's a whole different metric for every single individual.
That's right.
And who are we to judge that it's going to take somebody else longer than it took us?
Nope, there's
So-
no time. It's like grieving. You don't have a time limit
Right.
on grief. And any part of your life that changes that dramatically, there's a level of grief.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll share this too. I have a friend who's a very good friend of mine whose mother passed away this year, and a few months ago, I guess. Really having a hard time with it. She was a single mom, and they were very close. And he's having a hard time with it. He just reached out to me, and he's like, "I'm really having a hard time with it." And he's a man, so he's like, He's like, "I don't even want to reach out to you. I don't want to talk to you." But he sent me a text. "I don't want to talk to you about it, but I'm having a hard time with it."
Having a hard time.
And I said, "Hey," and this is true. I'm filming a movie currently where the guy gets divorced, and it took me right back to my own personal circumstance
Yeah.
that it caused me great angst that day.
Mm-hmm.
And on set, it made me look like I was a great actor, and it was just natural.
It's like I'm just living my life right now.
But it had been 8 years since we've been divorced, and I'm not crying every day or for
Right.
years, but still 8 years later, in that moment, it hit me.
Something hit you right then.
And I told him, I said, "Look, first off, it's only been a few months." But I said, "It's going to hit you next year." It just hit me. I showed him, I said, "Look, this hit me 8 years later. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. You're human.
Exactly.
If it doesn't happen, maybe you're not human. But you're human."
Maybe you're a psychopath.
But it wasn't easy for me that day because I don't want to say I thought I put those away, but I thought I'd moved past that. But that in that moment, in that scene, it brought me right
Brought
back
you right back.
to where that was, and that all the emotion I had in that scene was natural and real, and not the character. It helped for the character, but it wasn't purposeful in that regard. And it's gonna probably hit me again.
It probably will.
And so it's okay. And so that's part of life.
Yeah, it's part
There's
of
no
healing.
time frame. We were talking about time, but there's no time frame.
It's part
You'll
of
feel
healing.
better in a year. You'll feel better in 2 years, but it doesn't go away.
No, a scent, a song.
Yeah. Yes. Especially that kind of stuff. Yes.
It triggers. Those
Yep.
are your triggers. You know, I think I talked in the episode about your triggers and acknowledging your triggers. Those are your triggers.
Yeah.
And you have to own it and just cope and find a way through it.
Yeah. Learn how to manage them in time.
In time.
And
In time.
and
Everything happens in time.
doesn't have to be today. Doesn't have to be tomorrow.
No, but be forgiving to yourself.
Yeah. That's yes. Excellent point. That's really it. I had to forgive myself, and that's not easy.
No.
We're our own worst critics, our own biggest enemies.
Right. Well, because forgiving ourselves means that we have to acknowledge we actually did something wrong.
Correct.
Nobody wants to admit that they did anything
No.
wrong, especially in relationships.
Especially out loud.
Exactly.
In our head, you can say, "Oh,
Yeah,
yeah."
that
When I
was
see
kinda
them,
screwed
I'll
up.
tell them. Then you never do.
Yeah, but when you say it out loud, it's like, oh,
Then it becomes real.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you own it, and that's the growth in us all. When you own it, grow from it, and make those choices to do better moving forward. And
Yeah.
you know what not to do when you come across the same thing again, right?
Hopefully.
We
Hopefully.
can only hope, right? We won't make the same idiotic mistakes again.
Well, we all do that too sometimes.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's
I
like,
still find myself doing stupid stuff. Like, oh, that was dumb.
Yeah.
It's like my husband looks at me like, I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Was it really stupid? I get it. Get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
know?
That's the challenge. That's the self-examination that I think is never ending. That we'd like to think, oh, I know who I am. Well,
Yeah.
you might for today,
Good luck with that.
but you might not be that tomorrow or next year.
Exactly.
So you always have to sort of self-examine
Mm-hmm.
for your own mental state,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
especially when there's big life changes. That's the
Ooh.
thing, because you still are the same person, but there's something traumatic that's happened in your life that has changed you,
Mm-hmm.
good or bad. I mean, imagine if you won the lottery.
Oh man.
Okay, that's a good thing, but it's going to change who you are.
It is.
Whether people say, it's not going to change me. It'll change you.
Change you.
Because now you don't have the pressures that you had before.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you'll be a terrible person
Right.
necessarily, but if it doesn't change you, there's something wrong.
There's something wrong.
Then give me that ticket.
Right.
because
Let me have it. 'Cause
it should change you.
I'll own the change.
It should change you in some ways, even in a good way, but it
Right.
should change you.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to know, and you're different at 40 than 20. That's what when we're going through our own lives, we think we're the same person.
Oh.
But then when something stark hits you in the face, you realize, oh, well, I'm not the same person that I was at 20. I had a whole different view of life,
Mm-hmm.
unrealistic, like all of us,
Right.
of relationships and life. And you are a different person on a regular basis, and you have to understand that as best you
Yeah.
can constantly. And
Yeah.
is that fun? No.
No.
It's not fun.
No. Oh my gosh, no.
But it's
who we are.
it's part of life.
Part of life, it makes us human, and if we don't go through those changes, then we're going to be stagnant, and no one likes to be stagnant.
No. It's not a good place to be.
It's not comfortable,
Yes.
right? Comfortable, and so much of our lives has been comfortable.
Yes.
So now we're all living to, having to learn to deal with that uncomfortable feeling.
I think, that's one of the greatest lessons of, I have this quote, and I'm going to mangle it, so I won't try, but as a marathoner, I saw this quote once. I was training for my first marathon. You run a lot of miles. You spend a lot of time. And I read this from this guy that's an ultra marathoner. He said, you have to learn to find comfort in being uncomfortable. And if you're a marathon runner, you yes, you have to learn to be comfortable at mile 20 when you know it hurts, but you got a ways to go. And you got to learn to internalize that and it's okay to be uncomfortable. Running really has been a big metaphor in my life. It helped me deal with things in that way. Like learning that it's okay to hurt, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Guess what? I still finished.
That's it.
And you'll finish everything in life, and it really, but I'm learning that. You got to learn it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
You got to learn that.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll do that, getting off on a running tangent, but I run every day in the morning, first thing. Sometimes I'll run in the middle of the afternoon because I don't want to, and I know it'll be uncomfortable. And I do that on purpose. Because I know it's going to be terrible, and I'm going to bitch and moan the whole time I do it. But I know it's going to pay dividends down the line that I did something I didn't want to do that didn't hurt me.
No.
It was just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now, in the summer, different story. I wouldn't do that in the middle of the summer here. But I ran the other day, like at midday, and I don't like doing that. It just feels like it changes my whole day around, and it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But I did it on purpose. And it's those things of learning to be uncomfortable and learning that that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to be comfortable every moment of your life. We all want to be or think we do.
We think we do, right.
But you got to learn that, most of the time, it's okay if you're not.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So,
well,
anyhow.
We're going to end on that note. It's okay to be uncomfortable. I like it. I say it a lot to my students who are very uncomfortable in my class because I make them do a lot of work. So I always start off with that. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Everyone is in the same boat as you are when you come in for the first day of class, and going to be the same way when you're in the last day of class. So, we're going to end with it's okay to be uncomfortable. Well, thank you again for joining me, and we'll plan another session, of course, because again, this is season 2, so we got a lot to go on.
Well, it was my pleasure. It really was my pleasure. I appreciate it. It was really enjoyable. I'd love to do it again. And this movie I talked about that I'm filming right now, it's a lot of biographical in a lot of ways. So would love to talk about that at another time.
Absolutely. Because Father's Day, right?
Yes. Now I'm acting in a lot of things that actually happened because I wrote it. And so that's kind of a mind trip too. But,
definitely. So we're going to stay tuned for Father's Day because that's going to be our next conversation once you're all done.
Yes. But thank you very much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed the podcast, all of them.
Thank you. So, thank you. I appreciate you.
Dealing with real stuff. It's really good.
Yes. Real stuff, real issues, and hopefully teaching some ways to cope and get through and let people know that they're not alone, even though they feel like they're alone. Right? So, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
I want to thank Chris again for sharing so much of himself and a part of him that probably a lot of people don't even know about him. So I am definitely blessed to have you in my company and doing the podcast. So thank you again. Again, if anyone would like to reach out to Chris Zdenka, he is available on Facebook. He has his IMDb page as well. And you can also reach out to me and I can definitely connect the two of you if you have any further questions, because as a man, again, sharing that part of you is an intimate part of yourself. And I do appreciate the vulnerability that it took for him to be a part of the podcast today. So if you would like to reach out to me, my email is dc@thesoulfuleclectic.com. You can also reach me on Facebook, and that's going to be DC Soulful Eclectic. And also on Instagram. I am on Instagram, and it's soulfuleclectic.com. And you can also reach me on my website, www.thesoulfuleclectic.com. And again, my website is under construction, but it's still available for you to reach out and contact me, and I do get feedback from there. And if you would like to be a part of the podcast, please feel free to send me an email or sign up on the website, and I will get back to you. Thank you so much, and please take care of yourself and each other, and check on your neighbors. We can all use a how are you. Take care. Namaste.